Hey there, weary time traveler. Tonight, you're not some legendary priestess, not a courtesan spun from silk and whispers, nor a swordswoman plucked from folk tales, crafted by men hungry for fantasies. You're something far more ordinary, and infinitely more tragic. You're a woman in Tokugawa-era Japan, born into a world that never asked for you, raised to serve a household that won't thank you, destined to die in silent, unremarkable devotion. No grand tragedy, no poetic romance. Just another smudged character in a scroll. No scholar will bother to unroll. Before you fold yourself into that familiar pose. Spine straight, palms pressed, voice hushed. Do me one small favor. Tell me where you're listening from and what hour it is there. I'm always curious to see who drifts off, while unraveling the grim calculus of historical womanhood. If you'd like early access to more of these, slow slips into erased lives, ad-free episodes, or just want to toss a coin to your history bard, the Patreon link glows in the description. But for now, let's begin. You're born in a wooden house on the outskirts of some provincial town in Edo period Japan. The tatami beneath your mother is stained with the violence of labor. Paper-thin walls do nothing to muffle the animal sounds of a body tearing itself open. No one complains. They expect the screams. They expect the pain. They expect the inevitable disappointment when you finally slither into the world, slick with blood and howling. No one cheers. Your mother doesn't smile. The midwife, older than the roof beams, and twice as unyielding, just sighs. Another girl. She ties the cord with the same indifference as bundling radishes, muttering sutras not to bless you, but to ward off the bad luck of too many mouths and too few sons. You aren't named. Not yet. That would be presumptuous. Infant mortality runs high, and sentiment is a luxury. Why christen what might vanish by morning? For now, you're just the baby, or when your mother's voice softens. Like rotting fruit, the little one. If you survive the first moon cycle, maybe they'll gift you a name. Something plain, forgettable. Nothing that might tempt the gods to glance your way. Nothing grand. Grandeur is for boys. You're meant to survive quietly, or die without fuss. Both outcomes are acceptable. What they truly fear is a girl who draws attention to herself from your first gasping breath. The terms of your existence are non-negotiable. You're female in an era that has precisely two uses for women: breeding and ritual. The Tokugawa shogunate is a world of rigid hierarchies and endless repetition. Everyone has a designated place. Everyone has a script. Yours was written centuries before your birth, reinforced with each passing season. Support others, serve silently, and never, never ask for anything. You won't inherit land. You won't own property. You won't speak unless given permission. If you're clever, hide it. If you're beautiful, guard it. If you're neither, pray for good manners and a spine strong enough to bow forever. Your father doesn't look at you with pride. He looks at you the way a farmer eyes. An overworked field, grim obligation. You're not his heir, not his legacy. You're a future bargaining chip, to be traded for social stability. And if that trade sours, you're just another mouth he'll have to feed. Another failure to apologize for. Your mother is too exhausted for tenderness. She's walked this path before you, and knows exactly where it dead ends. Softness is a liability. She corrects your posture before you can walk, silences your cries before you can speak, teaches you to want nothing, which is to say, teaches you to want. You're weaned early, not because you're ready, but because another child is coming, and your mother's body isn't her own anymore. At night, when the embers gutter low, and the house settles into uneasy quiet, you catch fragments of your parents' whispers. Another girl, and we can't afford rice. Another girl, and the neighbors will talk. Another girl, are the gods punishing us? You don't understand what you've done wrong. You're 2 years old. You learn to flinch before you learn the word for fear. By 3, you're practicing bows. Not the shallow nods of merchants, but the deep, waist-breaking arcs that press your forehead to the floor and train your spine into submission. You learn to keep your gaze lowered, to walk without leaving footprints, to speak only when summoned. And even then, like you're apologizing for the air your lungs steal. You're praised when you're silent, scolded when you're curious. Curiosity is unbecoming in girls. It suggests you believe there's more to life than service, and that's dangerous. Your toys, if you're lucky, are carved from scrap wood. You might get a faceless cloth doll, not because they forgot to stitch eyes, but because your own face isn't meant to matter either. You're taught to think of others first. Your play is just rehearsal for future burdens. Carrying water, folding laundry, grinding grain. If you mimic your mother, they nod. If you mimic your father, they correct you. Your body is already being sculpted for confinement. Sit straighter. Smile less. Don't let your sleeves drag. Don't let your hair fall free. You're not meant to be admired. You're meant to be tolerable. At 4, you graduate to small chores. Gathering kindling, folding robes. Learning which objects you're allowed to touch, and which might as well be on fire. You don't touch your father's sandals. You don't enter the front room with guests. You don't raise your voice, even when you scrape your knee or burn your hand. If you bleed, clean it yourself. Blood is your responsibility. Always will be. By 5, you've mastered the cardinal rule. Your presence is only acceptable when silent. You're a background character in a play, where men take center stage. Your job? Stay still between scenes. You're praised for being good. And good means invisible, undemanding, obedient. You bow when spoken to. Apologize for interruptions you didn't make. Kneel before you understand why. And when you smile, you make sure it's small, deferential, and above all, brief. No one tells you they love you. That's not the custom. Affection is decadent. Instead, you're told you're fortunate. Fortunate to be born into a family. With food, with structure, with a plan for your life. You don't feel fortunate. You feel the winter chill in your bones, the gnawing hunger before supper, the ache in your knees from kneeling too long. But you smile. You bow. Because that's what good daughters do. And to be a bad daughter, to bring shame, that's punishable, not just by your family, but by the entire village. Women aren't judged as individuals here. You carry the household's honor. In your posture, your silence, your restraint. Sometimes you catch glimpses of what awaits you. A neighbor girl barely older than you, being fitted for a wedding kimono, her face powdered white as a corpse. A woman down the lane with bruises, peeking through her rice powder, muttering apologies to the empty air. A grandmother bent double with age, shuffling barefoot to fetch water. No one else will carry. You ask your mother if they're happy. She tells you to stop asking questions you don't want answered, so you stop asking. You begin to understand. Your life isn't yours to shape. It's yours to endure. The path ahead is as narrow and unyielding as the wooden beams framing your home. It won't bend. It won't break. It will only creak under the weight of expectations. Your thoughts remain your own, but only in the secret dark. Your words are rationed like wartime rice. Your desires? Irrelevant. You're not being raised. You're being prepared. And what you're being prepared for is a lifetime of obedience. By now, you've mastered the art of entering a room without making a sound, pouring tea without spilling a drop, laughing softly at jokes that aren't funny. You've perfected existing without disturbing the air. No one applauds you for this. They simply stop correcting you. That's your reward. The absence of punishment. So you've become what they wanted. Not a child, not a person, but a hollow shape molded by expectation. You bow without thinking. You kneel before being asked. You've learned with terrible efficiency that silent girls survive longest. You're 6 years old. Your world is small, ordered, filled with tasks no one explains. But everyone expects you to know. Each dawn begins with chores. Folding futons still warm with sleep. Sweeping dust from corners that never stay clean. Hauling water in a bucket, nearly as big as you are. You move in your mother's shadow, copying her movements, with the anxious precision of a child who's learned that mistakes are corrected with silence, not kindness. Your hands are still soft, but they don't belong to you anymore. They belong to the household, to duty, to the unspoken agreement that you'll serve without asking why. No one sits you down to teach you. You're not sent to temple school. Like your brother, your education comes in. Sharp slaps to the wrist. Raised eyebrows when you pour tea too fast. The way your mother sighs. When you sit with your knees too far apart, you learn to thread a needle, not because someone patiently shows you, but because the needle and thread appear before you one morning, with the unspoken expectation that good girls know these things. Your first stitches are crooked. No one praises you when they improve. Praise is for boys. For you, improvement is simply expected. Every lesson ties back to the future waiting for you, a future that feels impossibly distant, yet presses against your skin like a too-tight obi. You're taught how to arrange pickles in lacquered dishes, not because presentation is art, but because your future mother-in-law will judge your worth by the symmetry. You learn to fold your hands just so, to bow low enough to show humility, but not so low it seems mocking, to remove your sandals without making a sound. The margin for error is razor thin, but no one outlines it clearly. You're supposed to just know. That's part of being a girl, anticipating needs before they're spoken. You're never permitted to be loud. Even laughter must be measured. You learn to giggle behind your sleeve, the way your mother does when guests visit, not because anything's funny, but because polite laughter is part of the performance. You're told that quiet girls become respectable wives. No one tells you what happens to the ones who fail this test, but you hear things. The neighbor's daughter who spoke too boldly and got sent to live with distant relatives. The cousin who shamed her family by contradicting an elder. Their names are never spoken aloud. Their fates hover in the air, like smoke from a dying fire. At night, your body aches, in small, persistent ways, from kneeling too long, from sitting too straight, from holding your shoulders stiff. For hours on end, you're never allowed to stretch fully when others are near. Slouching is lazy. Lying down is indecent. Even at rest, you must maintain the posture of obedience. Your futon is thin. The air bites cold, but you don't complain. Complaints reek of ingratitude, and gratitude is the bare minimum required for your existence. You tuck your hands under your head and stare at the ceiling beams, counting the wood grains until your eyes blur. Home isn't a place of comfort. It's a stage for constant surveillance and endless performance. Every movement is watched, not maliciously, but with the relentless scrutiny of a society obsessed with hierarchy and order. Your mother corrects how you address elders. Your father only speaks to you when something's wrong, when your brother makes mistakes. It's met with laughter and guidance. When you err, silence and shame. You're never punished cruelly. That would almost be kinder. Instead, you're punished with the disappointed glance, the weighted pause, the quiet but crushing reminder that you failed expectations. You're never allowed to question. Religion seeps into daily life, like damp through paper walls, not always visible, but always present. You light incense at the family altar, bowing to ancestors whose names you memorize, without knowing their stories. Your prayers are soft, formulaic, focused not on personal hopes, but on maintaining family harmony. You're taught that a woman's virtue shapes the household's karmic balance. If you behave poorly, your family may suffer misfortune. This idea lodges in your mind, like a stone at the bottom of a well. When your mother coughs through the night, when a chicken dies unexpectedly, you wonder if it's your fault, if some ungrateful thought brought this upon them. So you promise yourself to be better. Your days blur into one another, a dull rhythm of tasks and whispers. You embroider patterns you didn't choose. You stir rice with motions you've memorized like prayers. You polish floors until your knees bruise. Occasionally, there are festivals, brief explosions of color and noise, where your role remains constrained. You wear your best kimono, stand perfectly still, and smile on cue. You're not allowed to run, not allowed to play, not allowed to laugh too loudly. The boys shout and wrestle, and wave sparklers. You must resemble a doll placed carefully on a shelf, admired from a distance, but never touched. By 8, your face settles into something practiced. You no longer fidget. You know exactly when to lower your gaze. You've stopped asking questions in front of adults. Curiosity is dangerous. It hints at dissatisfaction. And dissatisfaction? That's the first step toward rebellion, which is unthinkable. Instead, you absorb the rituals. You memorize the household calendar. You learn to read your mother's moods and adjust your behavior accordingly. You become, in essence, a silent extension of the home, part child, part servant, part living emblem of your family's reputation. The concept of filial piety is no longer abstract. It's the compass guiding your every thought, your every breath. Your father is the household's head. His word is law. Your mother is his subordinate. And your template, your brother outranks you by birth alone. Your job? Make his life easier. Defer to his opinions. Smile when he corrects you, even when he's wrong. You never speak ill of your family, not even in your thoughts. If your brother spills tea and blames you, you apologize. If your father calls you by your cousin's name, you don't correct him. You bow instead. There's no space in your world for selfhood. Not because it was taken from you, but because you were never taught. You could possess it. The very idea of having wants, of harboring dreams, is treated like vanity. You're not raised to wonder what you'll become. You're raised to become what's demanded of you. Every story you hear, every parable from the village priest, every cautionary tale whispered by aunts in the kitchen, they all hammer home the same lesson. A good woman sacrifices. A good woman serves. A good woman knows her place and stays there. By 10, your fingers callous from the loom. Your handwriting is tidy, if unremarkable. You're permitted to copy scriptures and family poems, but never to write your own. Originality is discouraged. You're trusted to cook simple meals unsupervised, entrusted with younger siblings, but you're never trusted with freedom. And you accept this because you must. Because to question your lot is to question your family. And to question your family, that's the deepest shame of all. And in this world, shame is more dangerous than illness, than hunger, than grief itself. The years pass with mechanical precision. You learn to school your expression, even when frightened, lips pressed tight, eyes downcast but dry. You learn to suppress hunger during lean seasons. Sip hot water pretending it's broth. Fold your sleeves over trembling hands. You master walking with knees slightly bent, to mute your footsteps, your voice softening to a whisper, your movements pared down to the bare essentials of existence. The boys in your village play at swordsmanship, dream of becoming samurai or merchants, chant sutras hoping to be temple scholars. You dream of not embarrassing your parents. And then one morning, your mother pulls you aside. Her hands are firm, her voice low and urgent. She explains what will happen to your body in the coming months, not with warmth, but with clinical detachment. You're 11. The word marriage drops, like a stone into still water. You nod because it's expected, but something sharp lodges beneath your ribs. Not quite pain, not quite fear, just the slow realization that you're no longer just a daughter. You're now a future wife, a potential mother, a bargaining chip in some unseen familial strategy. You don't know what love is. You barely recognize your own reflection in the water bucket, but you understand the weight in your mother's eyes, the tension in her fingers as she smooths your robe, the way she won't meet your gaze, and with the terrible clarity of a child who's learned to read silence. You know, your life was never yours. Time bleeds onward. You're 13 now. Your father has arranged a marriage. This isn't a surprise. You've known for years. Your future wouldn't be yours to choose. The growing hush around your name, during family meals, the way relatives glance at your hips when they think you're not looking. It all made the truth obvious. Long before the formal announcement, no one asks if you're ready. No one asks if you want this. What you want stopped mattering. Around the time you turned 7, you're not being paired with a partner. You're being traded like silk bolts, like sacks of rice, like favors between men, building alliances with something more binding than words. You learn about your future husband in fragments. He's older, of course. He's not handsome, but respectable, which everyone insists is far more valuable. His family ranks slightly above yours, meaning you're marrying up, a feat your parents accept with grim satisfaction, as if your very femaleness has finally proven useful. You don't meet him beforehand. You glimpse him once from behind a screen, when his family visits to negotiate the terms of your transfer. He doesn't look at you. He looks at your father. That too is expected. The negotiations aren't romantic. They're meticulous, practical, conducted entirely by men. Sipping tea you poured, Your dowry is weighed, not by affection, but by inventory. Bolts of cloth, lacquered boxes, household items, maybe a piece of inherited jewelry, if you're lucky. In return, his family offers gifts of similar formality: sake barrels, ceremonial robes, a family crest stamped on something forgettable. You're not consulted. Your value is measured in rice and social climbing. The only thing expected from you: agreement, and even that is implied, never requested. Your silence is consent. You don't plan your wedding. You're told what to wear, how to walk, when to bow, how deeply. Your mother drills you in the art of bridal weeping. Tears must fall, but never smear the white powder. Sobs must be audible enough to show respect for your departure, but not so loud they disrupt the ceremony. Too little emotion seems cold. Too much suggests ingratitude. Like everything else in your life, it's a performance of balance, and the penalty for tipping too far in either direction is social, subtle, and permanent. The ceremony itself is a blur of ritual and restraint. You kneel for hours while incense coils around you and elders chant blessings. You're meant to absorb without comprehension. Your back aches, your knees scream, your hands stay folded in your lap like a well-trained doll's. Your wedding kimono is stiff, layered so heavily your shoulders slump under its weight. It's beautiful the way a cage might be, carefully crafted, deeply symbolic, utterly inescapable. No one mentions love. That would be vulgar. Love is for poets and actors, not proper wives. What matters is duty, and you're reminded of it with every whispered instruction, every ceremonial nod, every stern glance from your father. Across the tatami, you're a vessel for alliance, a bridge between families, a womb wrapped in decorative brocade. You're not expected to enjoy this. You're expected to endure it with grace as you prepare to leave your childhood home, the only place where your silence was at least familiar. You're given parting advice from every corner of the household. Your father tells you to honor your husband and bear sons. Your mother reminds you to obey without hesitation. Your brother, who once pinched you when no one was looking, now avoids your eyes entirely. The maid who practically raised you squeezes your hand once and whispers, "Never talk back," no matter how unfair it seems. Then she walks away. No one cries in front of you. That would suggest attachment. And attachment, in transactions like this, is unseemly. You've known the three obediences since before you understood them. Obedience to your father as a girl, to your husband as a wife, to your son as a widow. This is the sacred trajectory of your existence, a neat lineage of submission. There's no stage where you're meant to lead, to choose, to stand alone. Autonomy isn't a virtue for women here. It's a defect to be corrected before it causes embarrassment. You've memorized your role so thoroughly, you could recite it in your sleep. You obey not from fear, but because disobedience simply isn't in your vocabulary. The journey to your husband's home is ceremonial and long. You ride in a palanquin part way, knees tucked beneath you, posture agonizingly straight. Attendants walk beside you, but no one speaks unless necessary. You're forbidden from looking out the window. The slats are positioned too high, lest someone think you're nosy or ungrateful. You try to catch glimpses anyway. Patches of countryside, the occasional rice paddy, farmers who don't glance up. You envy their freedom, even as they toil. At least they belong to themselves. When you finally arrive, you're greeted with formal bows, polite phrases, and the unmistakable sense of being appraised. Your new in-laws study you, like a questionable antique, checking for flaws, assessing durability. You bow in all the correct directions, present your ceremonial offerings, thank them for accepting you. The words taste strange, but you say them anyway. Gratitude is mandatory. You're expected to be grateful for being received. Your new home is unfamiliar, but not unexpected. The layout differs. The faces are strange, but the expectations? Identical. You're shown your quarters, a modest room with thin walls, and a view of the garden. You'll rarely have time to enjoy. Your days will be spent managing the household, your nights attending to your husband, your entire life ensuring nothing you do reflects poorly on the family name. Your duties are explained, with bureaucratic clarity. You nod after each instruction. No one asks if you have questions. Your husband, when you finally meet him alone, is quiet and formal. He doesn't smile. He doesn't need to. You're not here for affection. You're here to perform a function. You bow as you were taught. You speak only when addressed. You lower your eyes and wait for further orders. You're not nervous. That would imply you expected something different. You're just tired. Tired from the kneeling. Tired from the ceremony. Tired from the crushing weight of becoming something new, while pretending it was always inevitable. Later that night, as you kneel to undress him, with ceremonial care, your knees throb dully. The soles of your feet burn from the day's exertions. Your spine feels compressed, like someone's been stacking stones on it for hours. You fold his robe, extinguish the lantern, lie down on bedding that still smells faintly of someone else's daughter. You're not sad. That would be self-indulgent. You're not angry. That would be dangerous. You're just resigned. You think of your mother suddenly. Wonder if she felt this same hollowness on her wedding night. If her feet ached like yours. If she looked at her husband and thought not of love, but of distance. The vast, uncrossable gulf between one life and another. You imagine she did, but she never said so. And now, neither will you. The house settles around you like a second skin. Uncomfortable at first, but slowly familiar. Your room at the far end of the corridor, near the kitchen, has a sliding door that creaks no matter how carefully you move it. The futon is thin but serviceable. The window faces the garden, though you're quickly warned not to linger there too long. Staring implies idleness, and idleness is the one sin no wife can afford. Your husband's mother delivers these instructions, not unkindly, but with the efficiency of someone balancing ledgers. Her eyes flick over you, assessing. Thin but healthy, quiet at least, posture acceptable. She speaks in clipped sentences, pausing just long enough after each to make it clear she expects obedience, not conversation. You bow after every directive. You've forgotten how to do anything else. Dawn comes earlier here. You rise before the sun, light the morning fire with fingers still stiff with sleep. Sweep the courtyard before the birds begin their songs. The kitchen smells of smoke and fermented things. You prepare breakfast with ingredients you barely recognize, serving them with hands that tremble, not from hunger, but from knowing. A single spilled drop of soy sauce could mean days of silent disapproval. No one praises you when the rice is cooked perfectly. No one comments when it's not. The silence itself is the review. Each task bleeds into the next. After breakfast, you scrub laundry until your knuckles crack and bleed. Hang the linens in perfectly aligned rows that must never overlap. You press your knees into tatami, rough as bark. Scrub floorboards with rags so worn they disintegrate in your hands. You're instructed not to sigh while doing this. It sounds ungrateful. You're not ungrateful. You're fortunate, they remind you. You have a husband, a roof, rice most days. What more could a woman possibly want? The answer, of course, is nothing. You're not meant to want. Wanting implies lack. Lack implies need. And needs, especially women's needs, are inconvenient. So you fold your desires into smaller and smaller shapes until they disappear entirely. You don't look at the plum tree blooming in the garden. You don't ask for extra miso in your soup. You don't linger by the temple gates, even though the monks chanting soothes something deep inside you. You become a narrower version of yourself, compressed neatly into the margins of someone else's schedule. Your husband is neither cruel nor kind. He's simply absent, emotionally, physically, conversationally. He eats the meals you cook, sleeps beside you in the same room, leaves each morning without a word. You don't ask where he goes. You don't ask when he'll return. You don't ask anything at all, because your role isn't to know. Your role is to wait. You learn his preferences by osmosis. He likes his tea lukewarm, not hot. Hates daikon, but would never say so aloud. Grinds his teeth in his sleep, and sometimes murmurs a woman's name you don't recognize. You don't ask who she is. You don't cry when he rolls away from you at night. You lie very still, eyes open, tracing the knots in the ceiling beams, like they're constellations no one's bothered to name. Your mother-in-law inspects your work with the diligence of a general, reviewing troops. Each morning she examines the folded washcloths, tests the rice with her fingers, adjusts the angle of the incense holder by fractions of an inch. Her compliments, when they come, are corrections in disguise. You're learning quickly, but trim the wicks before lighting them. Good effort with the pickles, though next time use more salt. You bow. You bow again. You bow until your spine aches, and your neck seems permanently bent toward the earth. You're never alone, even in your own quarters. The paper-thin walls transmit every footstep, every hushed conversation, every clatter of dishes. Privacy is a concept reserved for men. You undress behind a screen, bathe in silence with eyes averted, surrounded by women who speak only when necessary. You sleep in a room that's yours, only by technicality, not comfort. If you make a mistake, burn the rice, chip a dish, step too loudly, no one shouts at you. That would be too direct. Instead, the household grows colder, in ways you can't quite prove. Your soup bowl is passed to you last. Conversations trail off when you approach. Your chores double for a day or two, without explanation. You apologize constantly, especially when you don't know what you've done wrong. You have no money of your own, no possessions that aren't technically household property. The robe you wear belongs to his family. The comb in your hair was a gift from your mother-in-law. If your husband chose to divorce you, and he could, for any reason, you'd leave with nothing. Maybe a small bundle, maybe a few parting words. If he felt generous, there's no legal recourse. You're not a citizen. You're an accessory. And if he were to strike you, or worse, there'd be no help. The law doesn't protect you. Temple priests would advise patience. Your family would urge endurance. Returning to your parents would be the ultimate disgrace, a public admission that you failed your primary purpose. You weren't raised to seek justice. You were raised to keep the peace. So you tuck bruises beneath your sleeves, like they're household secrets, not your own. Some days your hands shake from exhaustion. You hide them in your sleeves. Some nights your stomach cramps from stress or hunger or both. You don't speak of it. You sip hot water and pretend it helps. You focus on breathing evenly, on performing each task flawlessly, on being invisible. Unless the attention is favorable, you begin to disappear in increments. Your voice grows quieter, your footsteps lighter, your opinions vanish entirely. You stop humming under your breath. Stop imagining other lives. Stop remembering what you looked like before the marriage. When you catch your reflection in a lacquered tray surface, you barely recognize yourself. The girl with ink-stained fingers, who dreamed of praise for her embroidery, is gone. What remains is efficient, quiet, forgettable, exactly as you're meant to be. Even your body no longer feels like yours. It's watched, measured, discussed in hushed tones by women who ask about your monthly cycle, your appetite, the fullness of your cheeks, not out of concern, but calculation. Your purpose has shifted again. You're now expected to produce an heir, preferably male, of course. Your body isn't yours, isn't his, isn't even theirs. It's a vessel, a garden to be tended, not admired. And so each morning you rise before dawn. You cook, scrub, bow, serve. You exist under the unrelenting gaze of a house that will never fully accept you, in a role that offers no reward. Beyond survival, you speak less with each passing week, feel less, hope less, and still, you smile when commanded, because that's what good wives do. One evening, your husband returns to your futon, with the scent of sake clinging to his breath, mingled with sandalwood incense, and something floral, plum blossom perfume, perhaps, or the lingering sweetness of another woman's hair oil. He doesn't speak as he lies beside you, doesn't touch you immediately. You've learned by now. This pause isn't consideration, it's calculation, a moment to decide whether you're still useful tonight, or if sleep will claim him first. You keep your eyes closed, breathing steady, body still. You know better than to initiate. You also know better than to refuse. Sex isn't about pleasure here. It isn't about intimacy. It's obligation wrapped in rules no one ever wrote down, but everyone seems to know. No one told you what to expect, only what to endure. You're not supposed to feel anything. Desire is vulgar. Enjoyment is dangerous. You're meant to lie quietly. Respond politely. Keep the betting neat. If you flinch, you're scolded. If you're too passive, you're corrected. There's no right way, only a narrow window of tolerable behavior. You navigate it with the precision of someone defusing a bomb. Your husband doesn't hurt you, not deliberately, but his touch is a kind of absence. Mechanical, disinterested, practiced. He doesn't look at you when undressing, doesn't ask if you're comfortable, doesn't ask anything at all. You're a duty he performs when convenient, a space to occupy until sleep takes him. When he finishes, he turns away. When he doesn't finish, he turns away. Either way, you lie there afterward, breathing shallowly, willing your mind elsewhere. The river behind your childhood home, the temple bells at dusk, anywhere but here. You were never taught the language of your own body. There are no words for desire. In the vocabulary they gave you, only euphemisms, only warnings, things not to do, things not to feel, things not to say. You were taught modesty, which in practice means invisibility. You were taught purity, which in practice means silence. You were told your virtue is your family's honor, your husband's reputation, your child's future. Your body, then, is a container for other people's expectations. Your job is to ensure it never leaks. Adultery, for women, isn't just scandal. It's a crime. The punishment is execution, strangulation, sometimes drowning, rarely quick. A woman caught in adultery shames her husband, and the law protects his right to erase that shame with fatal efficiency. The man involved may be punished too, but never as severely. Men's passions are considered natural. Yours are considered threats. Your husband's infidelities are never spoken aloud, but they hover in the air, like perfume after a guest departs. You know the signs. The unfamiliar scent on his sleeve, the new comb in his hair, the unexplained absences. Once, you saw lipstick smeared on his collar, too red to be yours. You said nothing. You're not allowed to say anything. If you accuse, you shame him. If you shame him, you disgrace the household. If you disgrace the household, you risk everything. Your place, your child, your life. So you lower your eyes and wash the stain out yourself. Everyone knows. That's the unspoken agreement. The women know their husbands stray. The mothers know their sons keep mistresses. The neighbors know which men disappear during festivals and which women suddenly own silver hairpins they couldn't afford. No one says a word. They smile, pour tea, exchange pleasantries. The only one punished is the fool who names what's happening. Sometimes he's gone for days. When he returns, he's relaxed, in ways he never is with you, humming under his breath, eating slowly with satisfaction, sleeping deeply. You pretend not to notice. You serve the tea as usual, clear the dishes as usual, press his robes as usual, but something inside you erodes a little more each time. Not from jealousy, that would require hope, but from the quiet understanding that you were never enough, and never will be. You hear about the geisha from other women. They speak of them with a complicated mix of resentment and awe. Geisha are refined, beautiful, trained in music and poetry. They pour sake with elegant wrists, recite verses about moonlit rivers, laugh behind painted fans. Men seek them out not just for company, but for the illusion of being seen, heard, respected. You're not allowed any of those things. If you sang in public, they'd call you improper. If you dressed too finely, they'd call you vain. If you flirted, they'd call you shameless. Your husband pursues grace in other women and punishes it at home. You don't hate the geisha. You envy their agency, even if it's performative. They're educated, admired, paid. You were trained to endure, not to charm, to clean, not to sing, to kneel, not to speak. You wonder if any of them ever envy you in return. Your legal status, your child, your place in a household. But then you remember, your legal status grants no protection. Your child is considered half his. Your position is ornamental at best. You're not a wife. You're a placeholder. There are rules for everything, and all of them are designed to constrain you. You're not allowed to refuse intimacy, even when your body aches or your mind recoils. You're not allowed to show frustration, even when he stumbles in, reeking of sake and another woman's powder. You're not allowed to weep loudly, even when you feel yourself unraveling. Dignity, they say, is suffering in silence. When he's finished, he rises without a word, doesn't thank you, doesn't brush your hair aside, or wish you good night. He simply leaves the room, or turns his back, or occasionally falls asleep beside you, like a stone dropped into a pond. You clean yourself with a damp cloth, fold the bedding, light a stick of incense, and place it in the holder. You don't cry. You learned not to cry years ago. Sometimes, in the dark, you imagine escape. A life where your body belongs to you, where touch means affection, where pleasure isn't punishable. But the thought vanishes as quickly as it comes. There's nowhere to go. No money. No rights. No one waiting. You're a married woman. In Tokugawa, Japan. That's not a title. It's a life sentence. You don't speak of these things. Who would listen? Your mother-in-law would tell you to be grateful. Your own mother would say, it's always been this way. The priest would murmur about karma, about past sins being cleansed through suffering. Your friends, if you had any left, would lower their voices and change the subject. Everyone is enduring. That's what women do. And so you lie awake, staring at the ceiling. The paper walls flutter slightly. In the night breeze, a temple bell rings in the distance. The scent of your husband's perfume lingers in the bedding. You close your eyes, not to sleep, but to disappear. You're not angry. Anger would be hope. You're just tired. You don't confide in anyone. You clean. You cook. You bow. You endure. And when the bitterness rises, when the silence presses too close, you do the only thing you're allowed. You light incense, kneel, and pray. Not for change, not to be heard. Prayer isn't conversation here. It's performance. Another ritual in a life built on them. Another task to complete correctly, quietly, without making a spectacle of yourself. The smoke curls upward, toward the cracked ceiling beams. You press your palms together, eyes downcast, not in reverence, but resignation. You're not seeking comfort. You're paying your dues. The scent of incense becomes your constant companion, a woody, clinging presence that permeates your hair, your robes, the creases of your hands. You kneel before the family altar each morning, back straight as the bamboo in the garden, palms pressed together with just the right amount of pressure, not too fervent, not too lax. Religion wraps around your daily routine, like the obi around your waist, not always visible, but always present, always tightening. From Buddhism, you learn that desire is the root of suffering, so you must learn to want nothing. From Confucianism, you learn that hierarchy is the foundation of order, so you must stay in your assigned place. You're expected to embody the virtues of the obedient daughter, the submissive wife, the self-sacrificing mother. These aren't just social roles. They're sacred obligations. To resist them is to defy not only your family, but the natural order itself. You're told your suffering is purification. Each act of patience, each swallowed word, each silent humiliation brings you closer to enlightenment. Though that enlightenment is always just out of reach. You won't achieve it in this lifetime. Women rarely do. Your body is too impure, your mind too flighty, your nature too indulgent. At best, you can support your husband's path, raise sons who might become monks, tend the family altar with devotion. Your own liberation? Deferred, postponed indefinitely, maybe after death. If you're lucky, if you've suffered enough. The stories you hear are always about men, enlightened sages, righteous lords, filial sons who sacrifice themselves to honor their parents. Women appear only as background figures, supportive wives who fade into the scenery, grieving mothers who die quietly, beautiful daughters whose only purpose is to be sacrificed in noble tales. Their virtue lies in disappearance. They're remembered only when their silence served someone else's story. No one tells tales about women who spoke out, who left, who refused. If such women ever existed, they were erased from history, long before the stories reached your ears. You're taught to bow before ancestors, whose names you recite but never knew, to chant sutras without questioning their meaning, to maintain the household altar as meticulously as you maintain your own body. The ashes must be swept. The offerings must be fresh. The candles must never burn too low. Fail in these duties, and you invite misfortune. not just upon yourself, but your entire family. Your piety is a kind of currency, the only kind you're permitted to handle. You spend it daily, hoping it will be enough to keep disaster at bay. No one explains the contradictions. You're told your suffering is deserved, and also that you should accept it without complaint. You're told to pray for peace, while being systematically denied it. You're told this life is a test, and the only way to pass is to never question the rules. If your husband mistreats you, it's because you earned it in a past life. If your child dies, it's because your spirit needed to learn detachment. If you feel bitterness, you're told to chant more sutras, burn more incense, kneel longer. Everything happens for a reason, and none of those reasons are allowed to be systemic or human. They must always, always be your fault. You learn to pray not for change, but for endurance, not for joy, but for numbness. You don't ask the gods to deliver you from hardship. You ask them to help you survive it, without shaming your family. If you feel anger, you chant. If you feel sorrow, you bow. If you feel nothing at all, you light another stick of incense and pretend that's progress. The temple priest comes monthly to bless the house. He speaks softly, walks slowly, never addresses you directly. He talks to your husband, your father-in-law, your son, if he's old enough. To you, he nods. That's enough. You bow. He dispenses wisdom that reinforces your narrow role. Women must be diligent. Women must be humble. Women must find contentment in small joys. He reminds the household that a wife's devotion is the glue holding the family together. No one asks what holds the wife together. Your mother-in-law nods approvingly during these visits. She too believes in the holiness of submission. She wears her suffering like a badge of honor. The decades of service, the sacrifices, the silences. She tells you, with something like pride, that she never once raised her voice to her husband, that she bore 7 children and buried 3 without complaint, that her prayers were always for others, never for herself. She expects the same from you. She assumes you'll rise to the occasion. You don't disobey. You kneel when told. Follow her lead in rituals. Tend the shrine. You repeat the words she repeated before you, but feel no holiness. Only fatigue. Only repetition. Only the growing sense that each prayer is another brick in a wall designed to keep you small, silent, still. Sometimes you study the bodhisattva statues, those serene, smiling figures, with their hands frozen, in perfect gestures of blessing. You wonder if they were ever hungry, if they ever burned with rage, if they ever wanted to scream into the empty hills. But the statues remain calm, untroubled, indifferent, like the heavens they promise. Beautiful from a distance, useless up close. You're told women can gain merit through service, that every bowl of rice you prepare, every robe you mend, every hour spent in silence, brings your spirit closer to a better rebirth. But no one tells you how many lifetimes that takes. No one tells you how much suffering is enough. The standards are deliberately vague. That way, the bar can always be raised. You light another stick of incense. The smoke stings your eyes. You kneel for the prescribed time. Bow 3 times, deeply, correctly. You whisper nothing. Nothing is what you're allowed to offer. Nothing is what you expect in return. Outside, the wind shifts. The paper walls tremble. A temple bell rings in the distance. The sound hollow, beautiful, and utterly meaningless. You press your palms together. Close your eyes. For a moment, you imagine peace. Then you return to your body. Return to the room. Return to the knowledge that your dharma isn't to seek freedom, but to serve with grace. The incense burns down to ash. You bow your head, whisper nothing, and return to your chores. Beyond the paper walls, other women move through their assigned orbits. Peasant wives bent double in rice fields. Merchant women calculating abacus beads with practiced fingers. Samurai ladies arranging chrysanthemums with ceremonial precision. You watch them sometimes from the veranda while mending robes, your needle darting like a minnow between frayed threads. The peasant women labor barefoot in mud up to their calves, backs permanently curved from years of hauling water, faces leathered by sun. No one tells them to suffer beautifully. They simply suffer. When they bleed from childbirth at dawn, they're ankle-deep in patties by midday. No priests praise their endurance. No records note their names. They die as they lived, exhaustedly, unceremoniously, mourned only by children too young to light proper incense. You envy their honesty sometimes. Their weariness is permitted to show in the way their shoulders slump, in the way they occasionally snap at disobedient children. No one expects them to pretend their work is pleasure. They grunt when lifting heavy baskets. They wipe sweat with uncovered sleeves. They shout across fields with mouths full of missing teeth. Meanwhile, you must cover your mouth when yawning. The merchant-class women who pass your gate seem freer. Their sleeves brush the dust as they handle coins and contracts, moving through streets you're rarely permitted to enter. But their liberty is an illusion. They smile through transactions, but one bold word could brand them shrewish. They manage household accounts, but barrenness would erase that privilege. You once heard of a merchant's daughter who swallowed poison after being married off to settle her father's debts. The neighborhood whispered for 3 days before forgetting. Then there are the samurai wives, those elegant creatures who host poetry gatherings and paint their eyebrows in perfect arches. You see the truth behind their screens. Fingers calloused from stitching torn armor, late nights spent restretching silk over debt-emptied chests. Their gardens are exquisite, but their eyes hold the same exhaustion as yours. The higher a woman climbs, the more perfectly she must fall. And the geisha, oh, the geisha, when their shamisen music drifts through your window on festival nights, you imagine their hands plucking strings instead of scrubbing floors. But you know their freedom is performance. They're trained to fulfill fantasies, not live them. For every geisha who captures a patron's heart, 10 fade into poverty, their artistry reduced to rumors in aging tea houses. All around you, women labor. In silence, in song, in shadow. They kneel, serve, vanish. And the world calls this natural. The priests call it holy. The men don't call it anything at all. Your own work is smaller, but no less consuming. You sew until your vision blurs. Prepare meals for people who forget to taste them. Polish lacquerware until you see your warped reflection in its surface. You perform the same motions day after day, as if perfect repetition could earn you peace. But peace is a luxury, and you've been thoroughly taught that luxury isn't for you. You're not praised for diligence, only scolded for slowness. Not seen as industrious, merely competent. And competence is the minimum requirement for not being a burden. Your hands grow rough despite the lotions you're permitted to use. Your knees develop permanent marks from kneeling. Your exhaustion isn't valid, it's expected. Still you rise each dawn to boil water, sweep rooms, arrange trays with hands that stopped trembling years ago. You think of all the women you've seen hauling water, counting coins, bleeding into rice fields. How many are also pretending? How many dream of stillness? How many, like you, are waiting just once to be thanked? Not praised, not celebrated, simply seen. The blood comes first, a single dark spot on your underrobe, blooming like premature autumn on white silk. You stare at it, fingers frozen mid-fold. For 3 heartbeats, the world narrows to this. You're not a girl anymore. Your mother-in-law finds you like that, clutching stained fabric in the gray dawn light. Her nostrils flare as she snatches the garment, inspecting it like a merchant assessing rice quality. Finally, she mutters, not to you but to the ancestors whose altar she's already lit. The word hangs between you. Not congratulations, not comfort, just grim satisfaction at nature functioning on schedule. They don't throw a celebration like they would for your brother's coming of age. There's no ceremonial sake, no new robes. Just your mother-in-law pulling you aside after breakfast, her voice lowered in what passes for confidentiality in this house of paper walls. She explains what will happen to your body now. The cramps like dull knives, the monthly isolation in the small back room, the rags you'll wash and reuse until the fibers disintegrate. Her instructions are clinical, delivered with the same tone she uses to explain how to remove mildew from tatami. When she mentions childbearing, her eyes flick to your hips. Good width, she concedes, as if rating livestock. That night, your husband visits your futon for the first time in weeks. He doesn't speak, doesn't kiss you, just pushes up your sleeping robe with impersonal hands. You lie very still, counting the bamboo slats in the ceiling. 18 across, 32 lengthwise, while he grunts above you. Afterward, he rolls away without wiping the stickiness from your thighs. You clean yourself with a damp cloth, fingers trembling not from modesty, but from the sudden, crushing understanding. Your body isn't yours anymore. It's an orchard waiting to be harvested. The months pass in a blur of strained smiles and strategic silences. You learn to track cycles by the moon's position through your window, to time your chores around the cramps that leave you curled around a hot water bottle like a shrimp. Your mother-in-law watches your waistline with hawkish intensity, her lips thinning each time you discreetly change your rags. Then one evening, as you're scrubbing burnt rice from a pot, the room tilts violently. You barely make it to the courtyard before vomiting into the azaleas. The cook's daughter, a girl of 6 with scabbed knees, stares at you with round eyes before darting away. You know what this means. You've seen it before with your sister-in-law, with the neighbor's wife, with every woman who ever reached your age in this village. You're still wiping your mouth when your mother-in-law appears, blocking the moonlight. Her shadow falls across your face as she presses a cup of bitter tea into your hands. "Drink," she orders. "Then go to bed. You'll need your strength." For the first time in years, you're excused from evening prayers. The household's rhythm changes subtly around you. Your husband stops summoning you at night. The servants bow slightly deeper when passing. Even your father-in-law, who usually looks through you like glass, nods when you enter a room. You should feel triumphant. This is what you were made for, literally. A pregnant wife is a successful wife, her value quantifiable in the swell of her abdomen. But as you lie awake listening to the house settle around you, all you feel is the weight of expectation pressing down like a stone on your chest. Morning sickness becomes your secret companion. You learn which corners of the garden offer privacy for retching, which herbs soothe the rolling nausea. When your hands shake too badly to pour tea, you blame the draft. When you faint during laundry, you insist it was the heat. No one questions these lies. Pregnancy is your job now. And who complains about a laborer pausing to catch her breath? Your cravings go unspoken. When you stare too long at the pickled plums in their lacquered box, your mother-in-law snaps the lid shut. "Indulgence makes weak children," she says, though you never asked. That night, the plums appear in your room anyway, delivered by a servant who won't meet your eyes. You eat them slowly, savoring each tart bite, wondering which woman in this house remembers what it's like to want something. As your belly swells, so does the household scrutiny. The midwife comes monthly, her rough hands mapping your body like a surveyor assessing land. She clucks at the size of your ankles, prods the firmness of your breasts, declares your hips adequate. The word stings. You're not a person anymore, just a vessel with acceptable dimensions. Your husband watches these examinations with detached interest, sipping tea while strangers discuss your pelvis like farmers debating soil quality. Only once does he speak up, when the midwife predicts a winter birth. "Good," he says. "Strong season for boys." The certainty in his voice makes your stomach clench, because that's the unspoken terror, isn't it? The thing that keeps you awake even when exhaustion drags at your bones. What if it's a girl? You've seen what happens to women who produce daughters. The neighbor's second wife, shipped back to her family after 3 stillborn girls. Your aunt, relegated to the worst room in the house after bearing only daughters. Even your mother, strong, steadfast, endlessly capable, was never quite forgiven for your birth. So you do what you've always done. You perform. You eat the recommended foods, avoid the forbidden directions, sleep on your left side as instructed. You chant sutras not for a healthy child, but for the right kind of child. When the midwife mentions old wives' tales, carrying high means a girl, heartburn signals hair, you stop listening. Superstition won't save you. Nothing will. Then one morning, as you're folding the laundry, a hot pain slices through your abdomen. You gasp, clutching the washing table as a warm gush soaks your thighs. For one horrifying moment, you think you've wet yourself. Then you see the blood. Dark. Thick. Wrong. The room tilts. Your knees hit the floor with a crack that echoes through the suddenly silent house. Somewhere far away, a servant screams. When you wake, It's to the scent of burning mugwort and the midwife's grim face. Rest, she says, pressing a bitter tincture to your lips. There will be other chances. The words barely register. All you can see is your mother-in-law's turned back, the rigid set of her shoulders as she leaves without a word. All you can feel is the hollow ache where life had been. Later hours? Days? Your husband visits. He stands in the doorway, not entering, not speaking, just watching you with an expression you can't read. When he leaves, he takes all the household's warmth with him. The bleeding stops eventually. The whispers don't. You catch the servants glancing at your belly, the neighbors crossing the street to avoid you. Even the temple priest seems to linger on the passages about karma when he visits. You know what they're thinking. What you're thinking. This was your fault. The seasons turn like pages of an account ledger. Spring's cherry blossoms giving way to summer's humid stillness. Autumn's crimson maples surrendering to winter's brittle silence. You move through them like a ghost, performing your chores with mechanical precision, speaking only when spoken to. Your body heals, but the house remembers. The servants tiptoe around you, their eyes darting to your flat stomach before quickly looking away. Your mother-in-law assigns you the most back-breaking tasks, scrubbing the stone well until your knuckles bleed, hauling buckets of water up the steep path until your shoulders scream. It's punishment disguised as therapy. Hard work strengthens the womb, she says, watching you kneel in the freezing courtyard to scrub winter radishes. Your husband hasn't visited your futon since the miscarriage. You tell yourself you're grateful. Then, on the first day of the new year, as the household gathers to hear fortunes read, the priest pauses before you. His wrinkled fingers hover over your wrist, then jerk back as if scalded. There's life here, he murmurs, loud enough for everyone to hear. Strong life. A sun's energy. The room stills. Your mother-in-law's teacup hovers midair. 3 weeks later, when you vomit into your breakfast porridge, no one is surprised. This pregnancy is different from the start. The nausea is fiercer, the cravings more insistent. You wake at midnight desperate for sour plums, for salted seaweed, for anything that might quell the rolling in your stomach. Your mother-in-law watches with narrowed eyes, but says nothing when the cook slips you extra pickles. The midwife comes weekly now, her hands less rough than before. She measures the swell of your belly with strips of marked cloth, listens to your pulse with uncommon focus. Good signs, she tells your husband, who has taken to observing these examinations with unsettling intensity. Very good. As your body changes, so does your status. You're allowed to rest after meals, excused from the heaviest chores. When you mention a craving for river fish, it appears at dinner that very night. The servants treat you with new deference, bowing so low their foreheads nearly touch the floor. You should feel powerful. You don't. Every kindness is an investment, every privilege a loan that will come due the moment this child is born. You've seen how it goes, the way new mothers are coddled until the umbilical cord is cut, then expected to return to work as if nothing happened. And if the child is a girl, you push the thought away, but it returns in the quiet hours, curling around your ribs like smoke. You've heard the stories of babies accidentally smothered, of mothers who chose to follow their daughters into the next life. No one speaks of these things openly, but every woman knows the rules. Sons are assets, daughters are expenses. Your belly grows rounder, tighter, until you can no longer see your feet. The midwife clucks approvingly at your swelling ankles, your darkening nipples, all the signs that mark you as fertile ground. He's active, she says, pressing her palms to your stretched skin. A strong boy. She doesn't say how she knows. You don't ask. The household prepares with quiet efficiency. Clean rags are boiled and set aside. A birthing room is designated, a small space near the kitchen where the straw mats have been replaced with fresh ones. Your mother-in-law oversees everything, her mouth set in a grim line that could be anticipation or dread. You dream of rivers, not the gentle streams of poetry, but raging torrents that tear trees from their roots. In these dreams, you're standing chest deep in the current, holding something, someone, above the water. You never see the face, but you wake with your arms aching, your throat raw from silent screams. The pains start at midnight, sharp as broken pottery. You bite your lip through the first contractions, not wanting to disturb the household's sleep. By dawn, the spasms come regularly, close enough that you can no longer pretend this isn't happening. Your mother-in-law finds you kneeling by the garden gate, fingers clawing at the dirt. She doesn't speak, just helps you to the birthing room where the midwife is already waiting, her sleeves tied back with hemp cord. What follows is a blur of agony and effort. You're told to push, to breathe, to be quiet, so quiet, as your body tears itself apart. The midwife's hands are inside you, measuring, pulling, doing things that make you see white flashes behind your eyelids. Someone gives you a stick to bite. It splinters between your teeth. Hours pass, or days. Time becomes meaningless in the face of this all-consuming pain. You drift in and out of consciousness, catching fragments. Your mother-in-law's sharp voice arguing with the midwife, the sound of water boiling, a servant weeping in the corner. Then, suddenly, it's over. A final, wrenching push, and the pressure is gone. The room holds its breath. A slap, a cry. Congratulations, the midwife says, her voice carefully neutral. A healthy daughter. The words land like stones. Your mother-in-law turns away, her robes hissing against the floor. The servants exchange glances. Even the baby's cries seem to soften, as if sensing her unwelcome. But when they place her in your arms, this tiny, squalling thing with your nose and your husband's stubborn brow, something cracks open inside you. She's perfect. The midwife is saying something about afterbirth, about cleaning up, but you're not listening. You trace the curve of her ear, the surprising softness of her cheek. When she latches onto your breast with shocking strength, you laugh. A sound so foreign it startles everyone, including yourself. For one fleeting moment, nothing else matters. Not your husband's disappointment, not your mother-in-law's disapproval, not the uncertain future looming over you both. Then the moment passes. Your mother-in-law returns with a wet nurse in tow. Rest, she orders, reaching for the baby. You'll need your strength. You clutch your daughter tighter, suddenly terrified. But the wet nurse just smiles, a tired, knowing smile, and says, "She's hungry, mistress. Let me help." Reluctantly, you surrender her. As the woman carries your child away, you notice how she cradles the baby's head, how her fingers check reflexively for a steady breath. This isn't her first time. Exhaustion pulls you under before you can dwell on what that means. When you wake, the house is quiet. Sunlight filters through the shutters, painting golden stripes across the fresh tatami. For one disorienting moment, you think it was all a dream. Then you see her. Your daughter lies beside you in a nest of clean blankets, her face puckered in sleep. Someone has dressed her in a white kimono, plain but spotless, the fabric finer than anything you wore as a child. A good omen, or a peace offering. You reach out, then hesitate. She seems so fragile, this tiny creature who's already defied expectations just by existing. What right do you have to touch her? Her fingers curl in sleep, grasping at nothing. Yours answer. The years fold into each other like layers of silk. Thin, translucent, impossible to separate. You wake one morning to find silver threading your hair, your joints stiff with decades of kneeling. At 43, you're not yet old, but youth, that fleeting currency, has slipped through your fingers like temple sand. Your daughter is grown now, married off to a minor official's son. You watched her kneel at her own wedding with the same practiced grace you once possessed, her face powdered white as the winter camellias. When she bowed to you during the farewell ceremony, you saw your own reflection in her eyes. Not the girl you were, but the mother she'd known. Silent, efficient, always slightly out of focus. The house feels cavernous without her laughter. Not that she laughed often. You made sure of that. A laughing girl attracts attention, and attention is dangerous. You taught her well, to lower her gaze, to soften her voice, to fold her desires into smaller and smaller shapes until they disappeared. Now she's someone else's problem. Your husband barely acknowledges you these days. He sleeps in the guest quarters, takes his meals with your son, speaks to you only when necessary. You don't mind. Silence is easier than pretending. Your son, your pride, your redemption, has taken over the household accounts. He's stricter than his father, more exacting, but there's an unexpected kindness in how he brings you tea on cold evenings, how he asks after your health when the seasons change. He doesn't love you. Men aren't raised to love their mothers, but he respects you in the way one respects a well-made tool that's served its purpose. His wife is young, pretty, terrified of you. You see it in how she flinches when you correct her tea pouring, in the way she rehearses greetings before entering your presence. You could reassure her, but what would be the point? Fear keeps households running smoothly. You move through your days like a shadow, supervising the kitchen, mending robes, tending the family altar. Your hands still know the work, even if your fingers ache afterward. The servants obey you out of habit rather than necessity. Soon enough, they'll answer to your daughter-in-law exclusively. That's how it goes. You've seen this play before, with your mother, your aunts, the neighbor women who slowly faded into the background of their own homes. First you lose your place at the table, then your opinions are no longer sought. Then one day you realize no one has said your name aloud in weeks. You're not angry. Anger requires energy, requires hope. You're just tired. Sometimes, when the light slants just right through the shoji screens, you catch glimpses of the girl you once were. The curve of a wrist as you pour tea, the stubborn set of your jaw when you think no one is looking. That girl dreamed of praise for her embroidery, of walking beyond the village gates, of being seen. What would she think of you now? You smooth your thinning hair, adjust your fading robes, and return to your chores. The answer doesn't matter. That girl is long dead, and the world has no use for ghosts. Outside, the seasons turn. Inside, you count the remaining years like beads on an abacus, not with fear, but with quiet resignation. This is how it ends, not with a bang, not with a whimper, but with the slow, inexorable fading of a woman who was never truly there to begin with. The end comes not with ceremony, but with quiet subtraction, a slow dimming like lanterns at dawn. You wake one morning to find your legs refuse to straighten fully, your fingers stubborn as knotted rope. The servants exchange glances when you take 3 tries to light the hearth. Your son brings the doctor, a stooped man who smells of mothballs and old scrolls. He prods your swollen joints, listens to your chest, declares it the natural withering. His prescription is rest and hot compresses, as if time itself could be boiled away in a pot. They move you to a smaller room near the garden, not quite a storage closet, not quite a proper chamber. The window faces the plum tree you once admired as a bride. Now its blossoms fall like forgotten promises onto your sill. Your daughter-in-law takes over the household duties with barely concealed relief. She's efficient where you were meticulous, modern where you were traditional. When she serves your meals, the rice is either undercooked or oversalted, small rebellions disguised as incompetence. You don't correct her. What would be the point? The grandchildren come sometimes, their sticky fingers poking at your few remaining treasures, a hairpin from your mother, a faded embroidery hoop. They call you grandmother, but don't know which one you are. You tell them stories of your childhood, of festivals where the lanterns floated like fireflies on the river. Their eyes glaze over before you finish. One afternoon, your son brings a scribe to record your final wishes. The man's brush hovers expectantly as you struggle to remember what you might want. In the end, you request only that your memorial tablet be placed near your daughter's future home. The scribe blinks at this unusual sentimentality, but says nothing. As autumn deepens, your world shrinks to the 4 walls of your room, to the rhythm of labored breaths, to the careful footsteps of the maid who brings your meals. The pain comes in waves, sometimes sharp as broken pottery, sometimes dull as old scars. You bear it as you've borne everything, silently. The priest visits to chant the death sutras prematurely, his voice rising and falling like a tide erasing footprints. You want to tell him to save his breath, that you've been reciting those words in your head for decades, but politeness is a habit too deeply ingrained to break now. When winter arrives, the cold seeps into your bones and refuses to leave. They pile quilts over you until the weight makes breathing difficult. Your reflection in the washing basin shocks you. a skull draped in papery skin, eyes sunken like lost wells. You look like your mother in her final days. You look like every woman who ever outlived her usefulness. The household continues around you, its rhythms undisturbed by your gradual disappearance. Meals are prepared, floors are swept, business is conducted. Your absence is noted only in the small adjustments. One less bowl to wash, one less body to step around. On the last morning, you wake to an unfamiliar lightness. The pain is gone. The room is brighter than it should be. Through the window, you see the plum tree has bloomed early, its petals drifting down like snow. A maid brings tea, but you can't lift your hands to take it. She calls your name once, twice, then backs away when you don't respond. There's no dramatic farewell, no deathbed wisdom. You simply close your eyes and let go of the breath in your lungs, of the weight on your chest, of the decades of silence and submission. Somewhere, a door slides open. Footsteps approach, but you're already gone. The funeral is a modest affair, appropriate for a woman of your station. They dress you in the pale blue kimono you wore at your daughter's wedding, the one that made your husband remark you still looked almost pretty. Your hands are folded over a cheap wooden amulet, your face powdered to mask the pallor of death. The priest chants faster than usual, his eyes darting toward the midday meal waiting in the main house. Your son kneels at the head of the procession, his face appropriately solemn. Your daughter weeps into her sleeve with the perfect, practiced cadence you taught her. The grandchildren fidget in their stiff new clothes. No one speaks of your life. There are no anecdotes about your wit or kindness. No mention of the embroidered robes that outlasted 3 generations, the countless meals prepared during famines, the silent nights you spent nursing fevers. You are mourned in the abstract, as a mother, as a wife, as a placeholder in the family chronicles. The fire consumes your body quickly. The undertaker remarks on how little you weighed, as if even in death you were considerate, taking up less space than expected. Your bones are placed in the family grave beside your husband's first wife, the pretty one who died young, and behind his parents. Your memorial tablet is carved with the characters of your married name, the dates of your birth and death, and 2 lines praising your obedience. Back at the house, the guests eat rice cakes and drink sake. Your daughter-in-law supervises the servants with newfound authority. Someone laughs too loudly near the garden where you used to sit. The sound is jarring, almost obscene, but life has already folded over the space where you used to be. In the coming weeks, your possessions are quietly redistributed. The goods sewing needles to the head maid, your winter robes to a poorer cousin, the few pieces of jewelry melted down for your granddaughter's dowry. Your room is aired out, the tatami replaced, and by the new year it belongs to your son's second son. The household shrine gains another tablet, another name to recite during festivals. Your son makes the offerings dutifully, a pinch of incense, a cup of water, a brief bow. He doesn't linger. No one does. Years pass. The plum tree you loved is cut down when its roots threaten the foundation. Your granddaughter marries into a merchant family and brags about her samurai ancestry. Your embroidery patterns are still used, though no one remembers whose hands first stitched them. One rainy season, the roof leaks directly onto your memorial tablet. The characters blur slightly at the edges, the ink running like tears no one ever shed for you. No one notices. And so you fade, not from memory, you were never really in it, but from the physical world. A name on a damp piece of wood, a set of dates, a cautionary tale told to willful girls. The world changes around your absence. The shogunate falls. New laws are written. Women begin to speak in voices that don't apologize for existing. But none of this touches you. You are, and always were, a blank space in someone else's story. The wind carries your ashes further than your feet ever wandered in life. Over the thatched roofs of your husband's house, past the temple where you prayed for sons, across the rice fields where peasant women still bend like reeds under the summer sun. For one fleeting moment, you are everywhere and nowhere, as boundless as you never dared to be. Then the urn is sealed, and you are returned to the orderly world of men. Your son places your remains in the family crypt with the same efficient motions he uses to tally warehouse inventories. The stone chamber smells of damp earth and old incense, crowded with generations of similar urns. Yours sits between your husband's first wife, the one who died young enough to remain beautiful, and his mother, the one who taught you how to suffer correctly. The space is tight, but no one complains. Women are trained to occupy minimal space, even in death. Back in the village, life continues with barely a ripple. The neighbor's wife uses your death to chastise her lazy daughter-in-law. At least she was obedient till the end. The fishmonger pauses mid-bargain to remark, "What a shame it was you never got to see your great-grandson." The comment hangs in the air, unanswered. No one mentions how you wept when the midwife placed that stillborn boy in your arms 40 years prior. Your memorial tablet is placed in the household shrine, its fresh lacquer gleaming among the older, dustier names. The priest assures your family the characters are particularly well carved, the horizontal strokes steady, the vertical lines unwavering. It's the most praise your name will ever receive. For 49 days, they observe the proper rituals. Incense is lit, sutras are chanted, offerings of your favorite foods, or what they assume were your favorites, are placed before the tablet. On the final day, your daughter burns the paper effigy of a servant you're supposed to need in the afterlife. The flames consume the paper doll quickly, its painted face curling into ash. You wonder if anyone considered that after 60 years of servitude, you might have preferred rest. The seasons turn without you. Spring, your daughter-in-law repaints the house with the bold colors now fashionable in Tokyo, covering the faded indigo patterns you once carefully maintained. Summer, a traveling photographer captures your family's portrait. When the image arrives, you notice your grandson's wife is seated where you once would have been, her hands folded in the same demure position you mastered decades ago. Autumn, your husband takes a third wife, a girl young enough to be your granddaughter. She rearranges the kitchen shelves where you once hid sour plums for your daughter. Winter, the first snowfall reveals tiny footprints leading to your grave. A fox, perhaps, or a neighbor's child daring the others to touch the ghost woman's tombstone. The tracks are gone by morning. Years accumulate like fallen leaves. Your great-granddaughter, a girl with your stubborn chin, is sent to the new Western-style school in town. She learns to write her name in both kanji and Roman letters, to calculate sums faster than the abacus, to question things you would never have dared to doubt. When she reads aloud from her history textbook, your name isn't among the lists of notable women. Why would it be? You never rebelled, never created, never led. You simply endured, and endurance, while admirable, isn't history. The village modernizes around your memory. The old well where you drew water is paved over for a motorcar road. The persimmon tree you used to rest under is cut down to make way for a telegraph pole. Even death, it seems, cannot protect you from progress. On the 100th anniversary of your birth, a great-grandson you never met visits the family grave. He pauses at your tablet just long enough to wipe away a spider's web before moving on to pay respects to more important ancestors. The offering he leaves, a single rice cracker, is eaten by crows before sunset. The world you knew is disappearing. Brides no longer blacken their teeth. Women inherit property. Divorce is legal. Sometimes, on windy nights, the new wife, now old herself, claims to hear the rustle of silk slippers in the corridor, but when she checks, there's only moonlight pooling on freshly waxed floors. Perhaps you linger, perhaps not. Either way, the living have stopped listening for you. Your name remains carved in wood, etched in stone, recorded in the family register. But these are just markings, not memories. The woman you were, the girl who loved the scent of plum blossoms, the bride who trembled under unfamiliar hands, the mother who secretly rocked her daughter long after she'd fallen asleep. That woman is gone. What remains is an outline, a silhouette, a space where someone once knelt. The wind scatters the last of your ashes over fields where young women now stand upright as they work, their laughter unpunished, their faces turned toward the sun. You are forgotten. You are free.